My partner secretly bought a house, then told me he didn't love me. What I did next was a surprise. Part 1. We have to go back to 2020 to tell this story right. We're about 7 months into a pandemic, and thankfully he and I were both on remote teams that everybody had kept their job. We weren't dealing with any kind of hiccups or tight finances. In fact, everything was going my way. We were talking about long-term plans and even started going house shopping toward the end of summer. And I had just flown out to meet his family for the first time and take family photos. I was so excited for the future. Right around the same time, I was starting to burn out on my job and had taken an interest in writing my own book and starting a podcast. So after many discussions, late night agonizing and hand-wringing, I made the decision to leave my job. Well, imagine my surprise when 6 days after I turned in my notice, he told me, "There's no easy way to say this. I don't love you the same way that you love me, and I'm moving into the new house by myself." That's right. The agents that we had met with, that we had been texting with, had sold him the house behind my back without my knowledge and secret. And the very next day, he was packing his stuff and moving out. Devastated doesn't even begin to describe how I felt in that moment. I'd gone from having everything going my way to no house, no job, no partner, and no idea what to do next. My partner secretly bought a house, then said he didn't love me. What I did next was a surprise. Part 2. Somewhere in the fits of my grief, of my despair, I had an insight. I didn't like any of the options that I was left with. He, of course, wanted me to stay in the townhouse that we had shared together, and I did not want to be in that place that we had built so many memories. I could have gone home to family, I could have bought my own place or rented my own place, but Houston had never really felt like home to me. And that's where the spark came from. And I realized I'd always wanted to travel, but I could never get any of my partners to travel with me. I was inspired. And so I threw myself into planning this trip. All I knew was that it was going to start in New Orleans, a place I had always wanted to go. So I sold or gave away almost everything I owned and packed what little I had left into my car with my cat Stella, and I took off for New Orleans. Now, this is 2021, and it was before there were any vaccines. Mandates were still a thing, and Mardi Gras was canceled that year. Didn't stop me from arriving in the city determined to see what I could see, until, out of habit, I fell into the same old routine. I would get up, I would do client work, I would attend meetings, and by the end of the day, I would be exhausted and not really sure what to do next or where to go. After a couple weeks of this, I decided I'd had enough. My partner secretly bought a house and then told me he didn't love me. What I did next was a surprise. Part 3. I took one of the things that I had researched, one of the items off my list, this little restaurant on Magazine Street called La Petite Grocerie. Took myself to that restaurant for the evening as a bit of a celebration. Hey, we're going to do something. We're actually going to explore this town. That was the best decision I could have made because I had the most spectacular meal of my life and I didn't even order it. I just made friends with the server who was incredible and trusted all of her recommendations, and it was fantastic. That actually led me to simply talking to locals and telling them, hey, here's where I am. Here's what I'm trying to do. What should I see? Where should I eat? Help me get to know your town. And it was awesome. Something about the environment in New Orleans with the jazz and the celebratory atmosphere on Bourbon Street changed my initial plan to go down the Gulf Coast into Florida to travel to all of the musical cities. And that's how I found myself in Memphis after New Orleans, watching the March of the Peabody Ducks, exploring Mud Islands, trying Gus's world-famous fried chicken, which is so, so good. From Memphis, I went to Nashville. I found myself exploring the Ryman Auditorium, standing on the same stage on the Grand Ole Opry as so many stars and legends that I had seen in my past. It was so inspiring and moving. And from there, I went to Asheville, North Carolina, and had an out-of-body experience in an outdoor spa called Shoji, where I was sitting in a hot tub looking out into the woods as the sun set and the fireflies came out. I also hiked to the base of a waterfall. There's lots of waterfalls and hiking trails outside Asheville, but I never knew that since that was the first time I visited. I sat at the base of High Falls and I swear I lost time. I was down there for about an hour and didn't even realize it until I looked at my watch. From Asheville, I went down into Georgia. I did llama yoga in Atlanta. I went down to Savannah and had an amazing time at this wonderful bed and breakfast, sitting on a giant 2-story front porch with the lazily swirling fans in the late summer of 2021. My partner secretly bought a house and told me he didn't love me. What I did next was a surprise. Part 4. The funny thing about all this is when I took off, when I hit the road initially, I was scared. I thought it was going to be lonely. I thought I would be sad and mopey. And it turns out that the exact opposite happened. I found out that I had friends or friends of friends in just about every town I had gone to. Talk about a connected society. I would show up in a place and say, hey, who do I know that's in this town? And figure out that friends had moved from different cities and they knew people that I should meet. And in the places that I didn't know people, the locals were fantastic. I remember having a conversation at the bar at a restaurant called Fat Olives in Flagstaff, Arizona, where a bunch of us were flying solo and the restaurant was packed to the gills. And each of us ordered a different pizza. And as we were looking down the bar at everybody's pizzas going, oh man, that one looks really good. I wish I had gotten that. I almost ordered that. Eventually, we started passing slices of pizza back and forth and trading so that everybody got to try a little bit. And I never even learned anybody's name that night. We didn't share names. We just talked about our love of pizza, what brought us to Flagstaff. And it was such a surprisingly deep and real human connection moment that I never could have planned for if I hadn't just made the decision to hit the road. If I've learned anything from 3 years on the road and exploring and visiting all of these places, it's you've got to follow your instincts and you've got to try new things and push yourself out of your comfort zone. And I came to treasure my alone time. It turns out I had never really lived by myself. I'd lived with roommates in college, I'd lived with family, I had lived with boyfriends, but I'd never really spent time on my own the way that I did when I was traveling. And it became a source of comfort to spend time by myself decompressing, then go out and have these crazy adventures. I can't say that I'm glad that I got dumped, but I've learned that there is transformation and there is beauty in the devastation. The aftermath of everything falling apart can be better than you ever imagined.
My husband sent me a seemingly innocent text message, and it helped me discover that he'd been cheating for years. Part 1. He had sent me a text message that he went to church. He told me that he was at a training with a work buddy. He was out of state in North Carolina. This was not odd. It wasn't typical that he was out of state for work trainings, but when I say it wasn't odd, I mean it wasn't odd in our marriage. I never had a reason to suspect him of anything, really. I was pleased. I was so excited to get his text message, and I too was interested in this amazing service. He was like the artist on stage, the recording artist on stage, like this is their name so you can find them later. He tells me all this information because he wants to share it with me and so that I can find this amazing music later. I Google the artist and the date, and pops right up. The problem was that this amazing artist was singing at a church that day in Knoxville, Tennessee, not in Asheville, North Carolina, which is where he told me he was. My stomach just started to hurt so bad because I knew that he was lying to me. I knew that I needed to start looking quick. I found the church's social media. They recorded their services. So by the time that I found this, they had already published and recorded the services for that day. I watched this video, I don't know how many times, but when I saw him, I think I had one of those moments, right, that I just had, where I was really speechless. He was standing there, big as day, texting me with one hand and holding another woman's hand with the other.
I stayed with my husband after cheating, and I started seeing all these videos today about women who decided to stay and how they worked through it and how they're moving forward. And I just want to say that it didn't end well for me, and I doubt it ends well for anybody, to be honest, because once your husband cheats on you, they already don't care about you. It's not a mistake when someone cheats, okay? It was thought out. It was planned. And I don't care what people say about that. It's not a mistake to cheat. They stopped caring about you when they chose to cheat on you. And for me, he cheated on me with my best friend, so that kind of added a whole other layer to it. But he was never better after that. In fact, I highly doubt that he cared that much about me forgiving him. He more so cared about not losing his family, because if he lost his family, then he lost his image. And I think that's really all he cared about. And I'm pretty sure that's probably what the majority of men care about, is their image. They don't care about you. They care about their image. They care about how they're presented towards people. They care what other people think about them. But they stopped caring about what you thought the day that they decided to cheat on you. My ex-husband did, and I still stayed with him. He had an affair with my very best friend. And when I confronted him about it, he told me that the reason he picked her was because he literally just wanted to see if she would do that. When we were expecting our 4th child, my husband told me to get an abortion, and then told me he would remind me every single day that I had unalived our child. He would take photos of girls at the gym. He told me that I was weak when I was trying to push out our 3rd child, and proceeded to remind me that I was the reason that our oldest child was disabled. If he was mad at me for whatever reason, he would wait until I had fallen asleep, and then he would start kicking me until I fell off the bed. Or he would grab the blankets and jerk them all away so that I was left with nothing to sleep with. If I dared to speak up against something that he was doing wrong, he would give me the silent treatment, and it was an extreme treatment. Like, he wouldn't talk to me for weeks, and he would also withhold the keys during that time. So if our children ran out of diapers, I would kind of have to panic and try to figure out a way to get them. And finally, if he got mad, he would behave like a toddler, and he would grab like all of our snacks out of the cabinets and throw them on the ground. He would take our trash can and throw it, and he would even take his plates of food and throw it against the wall like a literal toddler. Anyways, this is your sign to, if you identify with any of these, you're probably in a domestic violence situation, and you should get out before you have 4 kids with him like I did.
I find out my ex-husband was having an affair. I can make a whole more detailed video of like all my suspicions, even my dreams, the evidence I was gathering, but pretty much things switched like a light day and night of how he treated me, and for about a month I had suspicions. It's June 1st, 2019. It's a Saturday. Cincinnati is having a local music festival. We have 2 friends staying in our apartment. We had just spent all day Friday at the festival, and he was just very off on his phone the whole time, being mean, drinking a lot, ignoring me, and my suspicions were at like a all-time high. So I wake up really early Saturday morning, he's still sound asleep, and I grab his phone. I know his passcode. I mean, we're married, that's normal. And he's got no weird text, no weird social media messages. But then I scroll over to the last page. He has a work folder. And that work folder is the WhatsApp. And that's where I found the messages between him and his affair partner. And I read a lot, saw what I needed to see, grabbed his phone, and drove off. I went to a parking lot nearby, and I read every single message from the last month. I saw from where the secret texting began to meeting up, from getting romantic to sexual, the whole thing. So yes, it was a very sexual and emotional affair, and she knew about me from the start. They were co-workers. So then I confronted him, and the hell began.
Here's some things that my soon-to-be ex-husband used to do that I didn't realize wasn't normal until after I left. When the Wi-Fi guy came to install our internet, he made me FaceTime him the entire time because he said that I might try and sleep with him, and then he still accused me of sleeping with him, saying that I could have slept with him before I called him or after I hung up the phone. Didn't tell me happy birthday until right before I fell asleep on my birthday, 2 months after we got married. gaslit and manipulated me into not having a job and said, I just want you to be a stay-at-home wife. And then when like money problems would come up or any kind of issue with me would come up, he would complain about how I didn't have a job and how I'm just mooching off of him. Only came home and ate dinner with me maybe twice a week because he was at his parents' or his brother's house. He did not get me a Christmas present, but instead he gave me his debit card and said, don't know what you want, you got $50, go get yourself something nice. Complained and told me that I was folding his clothes wrong when he never ever did laundry, wash clothes, nothing. He told me over a year after we'd been married and I was pregnant that he wanted multiple wives, and then he was upset that I was upset about it. Got pissed when my parents bought us groceries one time. Told me that he didn't believe that our son was his son, and when I said get a paternity test, he said, I don't even want to because it could be so close to my brother's DNA that you probably slept with that it would just say that it was mine and I would still never know. When the electricity went out on 2 of our rooms, including a bathroom, and our washing machine was broken, and I tried to get him to fix it for about 9 months, he told me that I should have been more grateful and that it was a test to me because people back in the olden days didn't have that kind of stuff, so I should have just been grateful that I had it in the first place, even if it was broken.
What you do if your best friend reached out to your child's father and told him that the baby doesn't belong to him, it belongs to her brother? Hi, and welcome to the only drama worth telling y'all about in my life. Me and my best friend fell out about 3 years ago. Okay, a year after that I had my daughter. We fell out because of a birthday dinner. Mine, to be exact. You know how women are with their birthdays, and the bitch was broke. It happened. Now, in the year of no contact with her, I conceived my daughter, okay? As soon as I have my daughter, she messages me on Facebook and says, congratulations. I didn't say anything because fuck you. 6 months later, she reaches back out and says, who's your daughter's dad? And I'd say it's none of your business. 3 weeks after that, she reaches out again and says, I think it belongs to her brother. And I say, don't you ever text me with no crazy shit like that again, okay? A year after that, at this moment, I'm still talking to her, my child's dad. A year after that, she reaches out to the dad because I guess my ignoring her wasn't good enough. She reaches out to the dad and says, hey, I think you should do a DNA test on your daughter because I don't think it belongs to you. He blowing me up. Now, at this time, I work 7 on 7 off overnight. He blowing me up. I'm like, what is going on? It's late. You should be asleep. And I finally answer, and he says, check your messages. So I check my messages, and it's screenshots of her messaging him and basically comparing pictures of his young kids, her brothers, to my daughter and saying how much they look alike. So I reassure him. I'm like, look, there's literally no possible way. I haven't even talked to this woman. She just mad we fell out. I mean, hell, I was a good friend, and I'm going to stand on that. So it is what it is. Ignore her. If you want to go get a paternity test, I'm 100% open to it. I didn't mind because I knew I had nothing to hide. He says, like, no, I'm okay. You said no. I'm good. I trust you. I believe you. All right. So now another year passes and me and him break up. We stop talking or whatever. And of course things get on social media and she gets wind of it. She used this opportunity to reach out to him again, his sister and his mom, to tell them that his child or my child or our child doesn't belong to them. At this point, I'm furious because not only did her dad need a reason to already kind of go ghost, this just gave him more ammunition. So I was like, fuck it. I'm going to send both of y'all in a group message a DNA testing website. And you can use it to your disposal. I'm not spending a dime. Other than that, we can go to court. Time goes on. Now the family has disowned my child. Her dad has disowned her. And the girl, I done reached out a million times trying to put her on blast, and she immediately goes ghost because she knows she's lying, right? So at this point, I've decided to take him to court. We finally get to court and we get up to the podium, and the judge says in order to start distributing funds, we have to establish paternity. So he says, do you want to get a paternity test? Tell me why this man opts out. I turned around so quick and looked at him like, what the fuck? And he gonna say, I always knew. I was just mad we broke up. Yeah. So out of all of this, I'm sure y'all are wondering what on earth would prompt somebody to be so invested in a situation that literally had nothing to do with her. You know why? Because my child is dark skinned, as y'all have seen on my page. But my child's father and I have the same skin tone. And you can tell who's uneducated and who's not, you know what I'm saying? Because black people have amazing genetics, okay? Our pool is so broad, it don't make no sense. So even if I came out with a white baby with red hair, it could have been out. So both her and her brother are dark skinned. So it just only made sense that my child belongs to her brother, right? Don't you guys sleep together for that? And if you haven't already gotten your kicker, here's your kicker, okay? The brother dead. Yep, he gone. He gone. And he hasn't even been here to defend himself during all of these accusations. Shit, wow, right? So after almost 3 years, a restraining order later, a warrant for her arrest, talking to her parents, and blogging her on all outlets, she has finally left me alone. So when I get on here and talk shit about folks, look, I've been through some things too, okay? And I know one thing, I'll never go through it again. I learned that first time. I did. And at this big age, I'm very selective on who I call my friend, who I let in my business, and yeah, who I sleep with. What would you do? Thank you so much, guys, for clicking on today's video. Guys, what do you think of that lady with the partner that bought the house on his own and then move out immediately after telling her he was no longer in love with her? I can only imagine, after planning the future, he definitely blindsided her. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know what you guys all think about the video.